Hey guys, welcome to the first retouch part 3. In this section we're going to be doing a lot of work with color. We're going to go through and color her hair. We're going to take care of this little area here, this little gap area here, and we're going to show you how to match the color between her face, her neck, and her body as well. So let's go ahead and start there, because that's an important part. Okay, so we're going to create a new layer, and I'm going to go ahead and just group it with itself. I prefer to work in groups. I find it keeps things really nice and organized and just makes things a little bit neater. Okay, well the first thing we need to do is figure out the differences between skin color, and this is something that, you know, unless you are used to retouching, maybe you don't even think about. But let's just start by using the brush tool. I'm going to sample this color, and this is just to kind of show you guys what we're working with here. All right, so I'm going to sample some of like the this is her arm here. Okay, that's her neck, and then like this is her face, some lighter colors from her face. So you can see there's actually like a pretty big difference in the colors. Like these two are from her arm, these two are from her neck, and these two are from her face. So there is a big difference in color. You can see these are a little bit more like a cooler color. These have like more red in them. These have less red, maybe a little bit more blue, and these are more on the yellow side. So what I want to do is correct all these to bring them closer to the same, basically the same values. So we're going to do that using a color balance adjustment layer. So let's go ahead and grab our first color balance adjustment layer. We'll do this a couple times. First thing I want to do is kind of get an idea of where this actually is going to affect. So it seems weird, but I'm just going to take this green slider and drag it all the way to the right. Okay, now I'm doing this as like a visual thing, just so I can see what I'm doing. So here on this color balance, right there, layer mask, I'm going to hit Controller Command I, which is going to invert that. And now I'm going to paint white just over here on the neck. I'm just using a regular paintbrush to do this. So basically we're just using layer masks to define, you know, which areas are going to be affected by which adjustment layers. Alright, and layer masks are really great because if you mess up, if you do that, and you color over her shirt, well, all I have to do is switch between white and black, which I can do so by hitting the X key on my keyboard. That's going to switch those. If I paint black on the layer mask, look at that, it's not affecting that area anymore. Pretty neat, huh? Well, you probably know how to use layer masks already, but in case this is your first time ever using a layer mask, congratulations. They're really, really great. It's actually surprising how long, personally, I used Photoshop without even, like, I didn't even know about layer masks for like the first 2 years of using Photoshop. And I'm not sure how I got anything done. Layer masks are really great. Okay, so that's our first section there. Alright, now obviously we're not going to be changing this to the green. So let's go ahead and click on the adjustment layers itself, and I'm going to just reset that. Okay, so the layer mask is still intact, right? The layer mask, let's just make sure to paint this in here. If you ever want to see what your layer mask looks like, by the way, just hold Alt or Option, click on your layer mask. Okay, so the layer mask itself is good, but the layer, like the colors of the adjustment layer of this color balance, we haven't done anything with. So we're going to start off by saying, like, I want this to be closer to that. So let's take a look here. This looks a little bit like it has some blue in it, right? And I want less blue to match the face. So I'm going to go over here. I have cyan, magenta, yellow, red, green, and blue. Okay, so what we're going to do is I'm going to choose blue. We're just going to click over here, and I'm going to start hitting the down arrow a few times. And what that's doing is it's putting less blue in that area. It's taking away blue, and then it's pushing it towards yellow. Now let's say I want a little bit of red in there too. I just click over here, and I hit the up arrow a couple times. And that's going to give me some red in that area. Alright. And you know what? That looks pretty dang good. It definitely like takes away the problem that I had with it a little bit. Let's go ahead and add a little bit more red. Alright, and remember, as I'm moving these, like, it's definitely affecting the neck. So just so you know, is like I'm moving these sliders, the neck is getting affected. But it's not like, you know, these are not huge adjustments. Just like subtle adjustments are going to go a long way. Alright, so I pulled down some blue, so going towards yellow and towards red. And let's just look at that before and after real quick. Alright, that looks pretty good. And you can see, let's just add a little bit more red and take away a little bit more yellow. There we go. So now the neck matches the face color much better. You see before, it looks like almost looks like grayish blue, and now looking much better. All right, very cool. And you're like, whoa, that was actually awesome and not too hard. And you're right, it was awesome and not too hard. Let's grab another color balance adjustment layer, push this all the way towards green again, and I'm going to hit Controller Command I on the layer mask. And we're going to paint this visible on her arms. Because remember, we wanted to match the color between her arms, her hands, her face, and her neck. We want all this skin to be in the same range, right? It's just going to keep things looking a lot more real. Alright. Now this is not something where like you have to go in and make these layer masks absolutely perfect. Like, you know, I'm just using the brush tool to kind of paint these in now. It really is as good as you need to get. I mean, you can go in here and, you know, use the pen tool and, you know, spend 4 hours making your selections and stuff like that. And if that is what you want to do, then I'm definitely not going to stop you from it. I just don't think it's necessary. Get the job done spending, you know, just a couple minutes with the brush tool and the layer mask. You don't need to go and make all your selections perfect. I used to do that, by the way. Years ago, I would go through and I would, like, every time I wanted to change a thing, I'd go and, like, make a perfect layer mask and try to, like, use a pen tool or other selections and all that stuff. And, like, at the end of the day, I couldn't really tell the difference from when I used to do that and when I just did it like this with a brush tool. So now I do it like this. Alright, that looks actually really kind of cool and totally weird. Let's go back to our color balance. I'm going to reset this and we'll just zoom out and say, like, what does this need to look like that? Maybe it needs a little more red. So let's grab the red and I'm going to put the up arrow a couple of times. Get a little bit more red in her arm. So there's the before and the after with that. Alright, and that actually looks pretty good, I gotta say. So there's the before and the after, just kind of matching the skin from her face to her neck to her arm. Okay, cool, that looks great. So some really nice color correction there. We're going to go ahead and make a new layer, okay, and group it with itself, and now we're going to work on the hair. So let's go ahead and zoom in. First thing I want to do is take care of this little area here. To make a really nice clean line around the neck, I'm going to use the pen tool, because basically I want a selection. Let's just draw it out here. I want a selection that looks like this or whatever, so I can, like, you know, fill it in and not have to worry about painting over the neck. The pen tool is a really great tool for that. So I'm going to hit P for the pen tool and basically click and drag here a couple of times around the neck. Okay, looks pretty good. You can close it out if you want to. There we go. Now if you need to move any of these points, just hold down the control or the command key and you can click on any of these points and move them around. Alright. There we go. Now we're going to make this into a selection. I'm going to right click and go down to Make Selection. And we're going to feather that by 2 pixels. Okay, so now this area is a selection, and you guys know how selections work. When a selection is active, you can only paint in the selection. That's, you know, that's how it works. You can only affect whatever's inside of the selection. So now I'm going to clone stamp the hair from over here to over here. One thing I do want to do is I want to hide the selection. So I want the selection active, right? But I don't want to see these little marching dots. So I'm going to hit Controller Command H. Now, if it's the first time you hit Controller Command H, it may ask you if you want to hide Photoshop or hide the extras. Go to Hide the Extras. Okay, Controller Command H just hides the selection. So now I'm able to clone stamp from up here. Let's make sure we're on a blank layer here. We want to make sure we change our clone stamp. Sampling current layer is going to do nothing because remember we're on a blank layer. So I want to make sure I'm sampling the current and below. That's going to sample this and all the rest of the stuff. So let's go ahead and hold Alt or Option, sample our point right up there, and start painting it down. There we go. Yeah, if I want a little bit more hair detail, I can add that as well. Okay, there we have it. So because we made a really nice selection there, I don't have to worry about, like, you know, for instance, like, I don't have to worry about painting on the neck. It's just not going to happen. Like, the only part of this image I can paint on is right there. So since we have that selection, it was just really easy to go in there and fill in that area with that hair. Okay, so let's go ahead and deselect. There's the before and the after with that. Really pretty quick, pretty easy. Okay, the next thing we're going to do is work on some color and some highlights with our hair. So I'm going to grab an adjustment layer. We're going to go to solid color. Alright, we did this before in one of the other sections when we were working with hair, but we'll do it again. I'm going to change my layer blend mode from normal down to overlay. Okay, so we've chosen a color here. Doesn't really matter which color you choose, we're going to change it. My color fill layer mask, I'm going to hit Controller Command I to invert the layer mask. Okay, and now we're going to go ahead and start painting this over top of the hair. Alright. Kind of looks cool with that red. I mean, it doesn't look real at all, but it does kind of look cool. Alright, I'll go back in and clean it up and stuff like that in just a little bit. Just paint black on the layer mask. There we go. Okay, so there's our red. Now what I want to do is double click right here and change the color to something that we actually want. Alright, whoa! She looks like Shakira. Let's go ahead something like this. Alright, and we can decide like how red we want it to go or how yellow. I think in this case we should definitely choose something that's realistic. So like this is too saturated. Alright, and that's starting to look a little bit more real. You can see over here, much too saturated. Over here, starting to look real. Okay, let's hit OK. Let's just turn this off and on, kind of see how it affects this area. Now, I'd like this to just affect the highlights of the hair. So we're going to double click on this color fill adjustment layer. I'm going to hold Alt or Option, and I'm going to click and drag from the left to the right. And what it's going to do is it's going to make this layer invisible where the shadows are. Okay? Anything that's darker than that, this layer is going to be invisible. So you can see it's just visible on the highlights now. Alright, now let's go ahead and choose our color again. Alright, and our hue, we're just going to come up a little bit more yellow. Bring our saturation down a little bit. Alright, and here on my layer mask, I don't need this to affect everything, including like the area that already has like shine and highlight towards the edges. I'm mostly doing it for the internal area of the hair there. Alright. Cool, that looks pretty good. Maybe we'll just bring it a little bit darker. There we go. Okay, now I'm just going to duplicate this layer again. And this time let's go back to this like bright red here. Pink, whatever it is. And this time I only want to affect just even more of the highlights. So just that, or like just that for instance. So I'm going to go back in here, double click on my layer, and I'm going to start changing around my blend if properties so it really is just the highlights that are affected here. Alright, there we go. So now with just the highlights affected, we're going to go double click here and I'm going to change the color again. Alright, let's hit OK and turn on the before and the after. I find that you know, generally I try not to go too crazy with hair because it's like, you know, it can get to look not real pretty quickly. But that's starting to look pretty good. All right, now let's add some red undertones to the hair. I'm gonna hit Controller Command J on this layer. We'll go back to red so we can see what we're doing. And this time, instead of affecting just the highlights, we're going to hold Alt or Option, and I'm going to go from the other side to start affecting just the shadows. So you can see now it's not affecting the highlights at all, it's just affecting those shadows. Okay. Now we choose the right color by double clicking here, and we go to a little bit more red. Alright, some nice saturation in there and a little bit of darkness in there as well. Let's hit OK and see what that looks like before and the after. Oh, yeah, I like that. Nice like bit of red in there. Now, I actually think some of this in her face would be kind of nice too. And to be totally honest, I was not planning on doing this. But let's go ahead and create a solid color adjustment layer. Okay, that looks pretty good. I'm going to go down from normal down to overlay again. Okay, I'm going to invert my layer mask, and then I'm going to paint this on her face. And again, I'm going to be totally honest, I've never done this before, what I'm doing right now. I just think it might be really cool. Or it might totally not work, and then you just delete the layer. So, never be afraid to play around in Photoshop, because you just delete the layer. Let's double click here. I'm going to hold Alt or Option and tell this to not be visible where my underlying layer's highlights are. Okay, so just the shadows. Alright, see how that's like grabbing like the shadow area of the face? Which is kind of nice. And now I'm able to change like my color. So like if I wanted blues to show up on the face, I could do that. If I wanted like yellows or these nice reds to show up, I can do that too. And now I can just kind of like say, oh, you know what, the shadows I want to be bright, like bright white or black or any color in between. Alright, there we go. The reason I was thinking to do this is because, there we go, that looks pretty good. I was thinking that this color, that red that I added, would be kind of nice like reflected in the face. So that, yeah, it looks pretty good. It's too saturated, right? It's like, it's a little bit too much. So let's go ahead and lower down the saturation. Hit OK. Let's turn this off and on. See what it does. But it really does a nice job like adding a bit of like life into the skin, in my opinion. It's maybe a little bit. This is one of those subtle things. And again, I really did, this is the first time I've ever done this, but it is working exactly how I wanted. You see how the skin looks like pale and like not a lot of color here? Just adding that adds a little bit more color, which especially combined with what we just did with her hair, I think really does a nice job to bring all that detail out. Alright, let's lower the opacity of this one just a little bit. Alright, beautiful. So let's see this layer before and after. Pretty nice. Let's lower the opacity of this one as well. Alright. And now on a layer above those, I'm just going to take care of some flyaways. So we're going to hit J for our content aware heal. And I'm just going to paint on these like flyaways here. And my tool is going to do the rest. It's going to take care of getting rid of all this stuff. Thanks, Content Aware Heal. You're the best. You're welcome, Aaron. I think you're great also. When you start having conversations with your Content Aware Heal tool, that's when you know it's, that's how you know you're crazy. Just in case you guys were wondering. Alright, there we go. Just paint away all this stuff. Like this little stuff like that in there, like if you don't really want to get rid of all that stuff because it's just going to stop looking like hair, you know. If you like If you make the edge too perfect, it's like, hair doesn't do that. Especially not this kind of hair. Maybe if it was like straight, slick black, back like black hair, then like sure, but yeah, this kind of hair, it's just kind of gonna do this. Alright, so mostly I'm just taking care of like the flyaways that are like crazy far out there. Alright. Cool, looking great. Let's go ahead and zoom out and see this, what I did on the face. Looks great, but I think it's a little bit too much, so I'm just going to lower the opacity just a little bit more. Alright, there we go. Alright, so we've matched the face color. Remember this? You're like, oh yeah, we did a lot. We matched the face, neck, and arms. We worked on coloring the hair. We filled in this hole, and we've done flyaways. See the before and the after with that. Pretty awesome. And the last thing I want to do is just affect the green in her shirt. So I'm going to grab adjustment layer. We're going to go to hue, saturation, because I want to pinpoint just that green. I'm going to choose over here where it says master. I'm going to choose greens, and then I'm going to use my eyedropper to make sure that I am affecting these greens. Okay, and now I can simply increase my saturation or decrease my saturation on those greens. And you know what? I'm going to decrease it because I think it's just, it helps me focus on my subject a little bit more, which I want that. I want to focus on my subject in the portrait. Alright, that's great. Let's go ahead and look at the before and the after with this section. So color as well as a little bit of retouching. Really nice. And now let's see the before and the after from the whole thing. There's a before, still really nice. The after is just a heck of a lot more striking. And if the hair is a little bit too saturated, which I think still it may be, all you have to do is go in here and lower the opacity of these layers that affect the hair color. Alright. There we are. Okay, that's the end of the next section. We'll see you guys in the next section.